Welcome to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I'm Lauren, and I've seen CSI through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick, and these are my first time experiencing these episodes.
And today we are reviewing Season 3, Episode 5, Abra Cadaver. Original air date is October 31st. Halloween. Spooky. 2002. Ooh. Director is Danny Cannon. Writers are Anthony E. Zeiker and Danny Cannon. And we start the episode flipping back and forth between scenes of the Vegas Strip and a magic show. So, Nick, what is our Vegas score?
So this is a very weird Vegas score because the way the Vegas, this is almost like someone's trying to gamify the Vegas score, right? Because I can't really call it the same shot,
right?
Because there's these jump cuts.
Yes.
It's probably one thing that they filmed zooming in, but they get credit for 3 scenes there, even though there's only 3 seconds of shots.
Fair.
And then there's a couple other scenes. And so we end up at actually 21, which sounds like a respectable Vegas score. But other than the fact that it's, sort of set in the Vegas magic scene, there's not a lot of shots of Vegas. There's not a lot of time spent on Vegas in this episode.
There's not. There's a lot of time, not a lot of time, but there's time spent in different houses that are more in the burbs away from Vegas, Maine, and tour buses and things of that nature. So
it's not even obviously casino-y when they're presumably in a casino, at a magic show.
Yeah.
And I think I need to hold until we get there, but I have a very interesting comment about the title of this episode.
Oh, okay. All right. So we'll get there. So like I said, we're kind of going back and forth between shots of the Vegas Strip, this magic show. We then stay on the magic show. They need a volunteer. So they pick a woman in the blue dress in the back of the theater. She goes up, they put her in this chamber, smoke, swords, smoke disappears. Oh, she's no longer there, but she's supposed to be back in her seat at the end. Yep. That's supposed to be kind of the end of the act, is don't worry, folks, she's back. And so they send the assistant to go to her seat and they aim a spotlight. She ain't there. She's not there. Which brings us to Grissom arriving to the House of Illusion, where Jim Brass debriefs him on the fact that there's a woman missing.
Yeah, so there's no body in an
episode nobody
called Abra Cadaver, and you might think at this point, as I did, oh, there's a missing body. It's gonna reappear at some point. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. It does not.
There is no body.
Well, no body is discovered, but there is technically a missing body.
Yes, true. There is a person who...
We don't know if they're dead or alive.
It's complicated. I think it's too much to derail right now.
Yes.
But as we go through this, there'll be many bodies associated with this plot line.
Yes, this is true.
Potentially. But this individual in the case, we are never going to find a dead body for them.
This is true. This is very true. So Jim Draft debriefs Grissom.
And I should say that the magician is my fake spot the guest star.
Okay. So Zephyr, who is played by
Tom Noonan.
Okay.
And who I guess it wasn't until he's not wearing a mask that I had a spot the guest. I feel like it's about to happen where they're about to interview him.
Yeah.
It looked super familiar. Voice was super familiar. Looked at his IMDb. He's been in a lot of things. There's one thing he's been in that I know I've seen, but he does not look like that at all. It's called The Knockaround Guys.
Okay, I've
which
never
is
seen
a
that.
Seth Green, Vin Diesel movie.
Oh, goodness.
And Vin Diesel is balding in that episode, in that movie.
That is a dated movie, if I've ever heard it.
Yep, but his character, I think, in that movie doesn't look anything, I don't know. But yeah, I was looking at a bunch of photos and I was like, I don't know why I thought I should 100% know who this person is. But yeah, so that's sort of, I'm calling him my fake spot the guest star, but I do have a couple other solid spot the guest stars.
I do, now that I wouldn't, this is definitely not a spot the guest star because I had to really dig in his IMDb, and then I'm like, oh, that is him. He's in an episode of X-Files and I do remember him from that. Okay. But he looks quite a bit different. He's much younger in the episode of the X-Files.
And then I was trying to figure out, did he remind me of someone else?
I feel
which happens a lot.
I feel like he's one of those as well. But he's in a show that I want to watch called 12 Monkeys. So I guess I'm going to see him in 18 episodes of 12 Monkeys if I watch that entire series. So
I wonder if have I just seen him in commercials for this show or something?
Yeah. Quite possible. Right. Okay. So Grissom finds blood, which brings us to credits because, it's a magic show. There's not supposed to be blood, right? And we then return to the theater. Grissom, Jim Brass, and Warwick are there. Jim Brass ends up talking to a couple that was sitting in front of the missing woman. They take their camera. We see that Sarah's also on scene. She's pulling a sword from the box. It's obviously a dulled sword. It's like a prop sword, basically. But
they do only check the edge of the sword, not the tip.
That is true. But the blood that they find on the sword is real.
Yep.
So that's concerning. We then have a little back scene with Grissom and Zephyr. Zephyr's wiping off his makeup. They have this weird back and forth. He's doing a coin trick and talking to Grissom.
Belittling Grissom.
Yeah.
Like he's a little kid and he's introducing him to magic.
He does have a very good line in this, which I enjoy. It might end up being the title of the episode, called "I'm an honest liar."
I was trying to figure out if that was from something.
It might be from something. It's a good line.
Old thing to say. I thought it was going to be like a Hamlet quote or something. Which I feel like sometimes those things get. I think that the term "honest lying" is like, I guess, a thing, but like I didn't. Like nothing jumped out. I like Googled it.
Yeah, nothing popped
nothing jumped out as like this thing. So if someone is like a real famous like pop culture reference that we're missing, let us know.
Yeah, but we also learn in the scene that, or he claims in the scene that he doesn't know where the woman is. So he's saying that that's the truth. He doesn't know where this woman went. We then go to storyline B with Catherine and Nick. They're at a tour bus. There's a very awkward scene of them singing.
Yes.
And I wonder if they like made them purposely sing terrible or if they're just terrible singers. I'm going to lean towards they made them sing terribly.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't.
Okay, I'm going to give them...
I feel like they lost a bet and they had to sing.
Okay. Right? Maybe. It was rough. It's rough. But we learn pretty soon after the awkward singing that the victim is Gus Kenyon. He is the lead singer of a band, and what looks to be an overdose at first, maybe not so much, because there's still heroin in the syringe, there's no vomit, and the tourniquet is turned the wrong way. Like it should have been pulled towards him if he was doing it himself, but it's pulled away from him as if somebody else tied the tourniquet. So they're already starting to think maybe this is staged, this doesn't quite feel right for an OD. And we do learn that he had been a drug user, but he has been clean for a while. So
I was going to say that very observant to notice the tourniquet, but then I like on the second watch there, I said, you never see the CSI episodes where they just show up and there's like an overdose victim and they're like,
like there's standard cases that they do all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah. And they've probably seen, dozens of
and I think like Nick makes mention of this when he says that there's no vomit, because he's essentially saying we do so many of these scenes and there's always vomit if they overdose, and there's no vomit, and that's very strange.
And it's their job. Like they're supposed to be looking for things that are out of place.
Right. So all these things together, starting to like make this not look maybe like a purposeful overdose.
So I think we've skipped
or an accidental overdose.
I think we may have glossed over Spot the Guest Star.
Oh, okay. Is this the tour manager?
The tour manager.
Okay, we did, because like...
you don't really interact with him much until later.
Okay, all right. Who's the tour manager?
Is it
Jack McGee?
Jack McGee from Rescue Me. He's like the sergeant. I think we mentioned another Spot the Guest Star from Rescue Me before. It's a Boston-based show with Dennis Leary.
Yes.
That I've definitely watched the entire first season of, and may or may not have watched the second season.
I've never seen it.
But yeah, and he's been in, I think, a couple other things, but he often plays that Boston guy.
Yeah.
Police officer, firefighter.
Yeah.
Role. But yeah, I was like, I know that guy. And I know exactly where I knew him from. I was like, I know what character I'm thinking of.
Nice. So that is our first official Spot the Guest Star of the episode. We then go to work and Sarah. They're finishing processing the chamber. Grissom's also there. We meet Punky Dillinger, the stagehand.
Yep.
And they make Grissom disappear. Or Grissom's like, hey, make me disappear.
Yes.
Because he's like, of course, like this only makes sense. The person was in the chamber. The chamber's now empty, but we don't know where the person is. We need to know like what the step was between those two things. Like, where did they go between being in the chamber and not returning to their seat? So
I also want to point out right now, at this point, they know this stage manager's last name.
Yes, Punky Dillinger.
If they knew
Zephyr's
other characters' last names,
spoiler alert, Zephyr's last name.
where they bother to get,
Any
the
information?
real name of everybody involved
Why?
in the crime.
Why do
They
we need
might
to
be
do such
drawing
things?
attention here. But I think for the audience, for drawing out the story, we have not yet been informed of all the facts.
Yes, this is very true. So they make Grissom disappear. They realize that there's like a chute underneath the stairs adjacent to the chamber, and that's what they're accessing to get, out of the chamber and down beneath the stage. So they're starting to explore down there. They're going near Zephyr's tricks. Punky is very adamant that like nobody goes near those tricks. Warwick finds some blood spots. They're following them. Punky at this point is claiming that there's only like one exit, which is like the exit like back, to get the person back to the theater. Nope. They follow the blood. They find another exit that leads outside. So obviously, like right out the bat, this guy
There's no way he didn't know that existed either.
I know.
You know how much time you've spent in that theater?
Well, I think at this point they think he purposely lied to them.
Yeah. And like you might try to claim, I don't go over there because whatever, dude.
Yeah,
you can't be like, there's no other way out of here.
No other exit, and then
like I've never walked around this room before.
And then blatantly, there's an exit right there. Sarah, during all this, also ends up pulling a palm print. We then go back to storyline B. Catherine is with Doc Robbins.
Do we have they went at the door. Do they find tire tread? I think is
yes. Sorry, they go outside. They find tire treads. Yes. Sorry, this was a weird episode to take notes for.
Yeah, it is a weird episode.
It's a very strange episode. Catherine's with Doc Robbins. We learn that their victim had no heroin in his system. Lots of bourbon. No heroin though. None.
Like not even like post-mortem. Like we checked the injection site or something. Like they don't really go into that detail.
They don't go into that detail.
Presumably none.
Right. We learned
there was some in the syringe.
Yes. We learned that his cause of death was an aneurysm to the heart, which they're assuming, I feel like I'm using that word because I'm like this. They're just like, oh, it's an air bubble that caused this aneurysm.
Yeah, I think they found the air blocking his.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, like instead of it being red, there was a big empty spot.
Yeah. We learn that he was already unconscious before the air bubble was introduced. So he had enough bourbon in him that he was most likely unconscious when this syringe was put in there and the air bubble introduced. We also learned that the like black mark on his finger is like just standard ink.
I like that Doc Robbins is able to diagnose.
Yep, just standard ink.
He replaced Trace in this episode.
Yeah. Doc Robbins wears many hats, and evidently Trace is one of them. Sarah is in processing prints. We learn that this is where they state that the stagehand must have lied about knowing about that door.
Yep.
And I wrote this down. Maybe you could help me. I know you took almost no notes. It's his print in the chamber, or his print is in the chamber? Yes.
Yeah.
His print is in the chamber.
Yeah, he's like, I don't go in there. I don't touch this.
But his print is in the chamber. Okay, there we go. So then,
which I overlooked the entire first time I saw this episode, and half of the second time I saw this episode, including when I rewatched this scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a clue to something that they reveal later on in the episode.
Yes.
And when they revealed it, I went, oh, that's the whole point of there being a print inside of the machine.
Inside of the chamber.
Why didn't I get that earlier? I just assumed that meant that he was lying and he goes and plays around with all the tricks.
Yeah. So this brings us to Jim Brass and Grissom with said stagehand. And his explanation is that he tries the chamber at night. Like he wants to be a magician, and that's why his print is in there, is because he playing with the tricks. So
and I think it, like he keeps lying to them. He's being dodgy. He lies about other stuff, and I think you're supposed to figure out through the course of the episode that he's very much just trying to uphold that notion of, well, I'm not going to reveal anything about our magic tricks.
Right.
So I'm just going to lie to your face, even though you're a police officer.
Right. To uphold.
Stuff, just to not give you any information.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Then we are with Nick. He's with the band. We learn that the whole band, supposedly, has been clean for about 6 years. We also learn that Gus had been treated for depression. We're then... This is not a good Greg Sanders episode. This isn't okay.
This is like the only scene he's in, I feel like.
No, he's in one or two other ones.
Okay.
But Sarah's with Greg Sanders, and he's in a headdress, and he's like pretending to be
Zoltar, the Great,
Zoltar or something. Yeah.
whatever his name was.
But in his ridiculousness, we learn that the blood from the chamber matches the blood drops, but not the blood outside. But those blood that match are not human blood, they're animal blood. He doesn't know what type of animal at this stage. But the clear liquid that they also found with some of the blood is thorazine, which is an animal tranquilizer.
Side note,
yes.
Happy belated birthday to the actor who plays Greg Sanders.
Eric Zamanda, who liked our Twitter post. Thank you. I don't think you listened to our podcast, Eric, but if you do, thanks. That made my day. I literally took a screenshot of it and sent it to Nick, and I was like, look who liked our post.
I was like, oh yeah, we were talking about that before at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, well, we've been a little delayed in recording because I was in Vegas.
And then trapped in Vegas.
And then trapped in Vegas.
Unplanned flight cancellation.
Yes. So I was in Vegas an extra 24 hours than I planned to be in Vegas. And thank goodness my pet sitter could stay an extra day because that was a very panicked phone call at 8 o'clock in the morning, which thankfully was 8 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. So it was like 11 o'clock in the morning here. So it wasn't as bad, but I just panically calling my pet sitter and being like, is there any chance you could stay another day? And he's like, yes. I was like, thank you. So the animals were cared for, which is all that really matters. Yeah. We then have Grissom and Archie going through the photos. These are the ones that we assume that they got off the camera from the couple.
Yeah. Well, they're in it too.
Yeah.
A couple of photos.
So they're going through the photos. Archie's like, hey, I recognize that guy. It's Toby Arcane, like the freak man. And I'll bring up my further thought on this in the next scene. Because the very next scene is Sarah, Warwick, and Grissom watching this freak show. This is obviously supposed to be Chris Angel.
Yes.
Like, this is an obvious Chris Angel reference. Without saying this is Chris Angel, without paying Chris Angel to be on the show. This is a very obvious Chris Angel.
That's why they're using the word freak too, is like I think Mind Freak or something was his show name in Vegas. And it's sort of like, the difference between a Siegfried and Roy and Chris Angel, right?
Yeah.
Different schools of performance magic.
Yeah. Yeah. So they watch his little freak show and then they're backstage with him. And like, I get the point of his character in the show later on, but at this point, they're just like sort of using him as a magician insider. Like they're like, do you think the woman was a plant? They're acting like he's a magician expert. Like they're consulting with him. They're like, do you think the woman was a plant? Why are you asking this random other magician about another magician's show? Like what? But
well, I mean, I guess you could make, then really I'm playing devil's advocate here. You could make the argument they're like, oh, there's clearly something going on here. Oh, there was a magician at the show. They'll have an insight that no one else in the audience that we interviewed would have had.
Yeah.
And so, that's why they're asking him questions. No point do I think he's supposed to be a suspect.
He is at one point. Very briefly.
Later, after something else.
Yes. Not here. No.
But at no point do I think they're suspecting him. They're just gathering information.
Yes.
And that's the point. But I think a lot of it is expose for the audience, make sure everybody's caught up. You know what I mean? Before we sort of move on to the next phase of the investigation.
Yeah. But we do learn from Toby that he thinks that the woman was a plant. Like it was, someone that they knew and it wasn't just like a random person picked from the audience. He also gives credence that the blood that they found might have been from a blood pouch. Like there's a chance that it was planted. We do have another Greg Sanders scene, a very short Greg Sanders scene with Catherine and Nick. And this is very telling of the times because he's like, the internet library told me that the band was splitting up. And like, and Nick and Catherine are like, what? What magical machine told you what now?
Yeah, we're still very much in the we have to explain the internet to people phase.
Yes, I found this hilarious.
And like people like the notion of like it's very true because like I remember this sort of period where like I felt like there would be people in your life who would say like they'd be like how do you know that? I said it's on the internet. You can just look it up.
Yeah, you can just Google it.
It's just like people are communicating. Yeah, all this information is there. Like it took
a long time
till basically smartphones when people started to have access to it.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
mass in a different way for really people to just widely incorporate it into their life. Well, not obviously, like it was like kids would go off to college and get a laptop and have access to high speed internet, and they would like come home in like the early 2000s and like their parents still didn't use the internet,
No,
you know.
no.
And so it really took those like couple of things happening where like people had laptops, people had the internet, people they were starting to use it more at work, but like at this time I don't think, I'm willing to bet less than 10% of the people had internet access.
I mean, yeah, that might be an interesting factoid to look up. I have no idea, but we also learn in this scene, not from the internet, just from Catherine's own snooping, that the singer wrote every song. So
Yeah.
the singer's definitely like the main contributor of the band's content. This brings us to Catherine on the tour bus. Nick enters. Catherine sees a phone book. She like picks it up. She is starting to piece together that the ink on his finger is probably from the phone book. So she goes out to a payphone after finding a smashed cell phone. She's like, okay, well, if you can't use your cell phone, like, where do you go? So she walks out to the payphone. And as she's out there, Nick goes and joins her. He pulls out drugs from a CD player that belongs to the guitarist, so it seems like maybe the band isn't as clean as they're saying they were. And she finds a is it this scene? I sorry, my notes are like so hard for this. Yeah, I think this is where she finds the name Dean, and like
Okay.
she's gonna go and pursue this. So then Warwick finds a match to that tire tread that you mentioned. It belongs to a Ford F-150. Greg Sanders enters. Oh yeah, so Greg Sanders.
Greg is like the band master.
Yeah, he's just like popping in and out of every few scenes. He's just making a little appearance and doing his thing. And the human blood sample that they collected, it belongs to Zoe Klein, who has been missing for 6 months. So
Yes.
weird. Like, what is going on? This brings Sarah, Warwick, and Grissom.
What? You know, we never find out who reported Zoe Klein missing.
We never find that out. We just know that she's been missing for 6 months.
Presumably she had friends, and maybe that's where it came from. But like,
Maybe.
they're never like, oh yeah, I opened up the missing persons case, or I talked to the detective. They're just sort of like, this whole episode is just sort of like, she's missing. We don't really care about that.
Yeah, that's all we're not investigating her disappearance right now. We're investigating the disappearance of this other woman. But it does bring Sarah, Warwick, and Grissom to a gigantic house. Like an absurdly large house. So they go to this absurdly large house right by train tracks.
Do you feel like maybe a writer of this show or director of this show, a friend or family member, had a really nice house and then had like a train put down next to it, and they were trying to like
make a statement
about how, you know, you could have this really nice house and then the government comes by and
maybe
ruins, like they put in a natural gas tank or a high power transmission line or a railroad or something.
Yeah.
And now your fancy estate is now less opulent.
Yeah.
Because they really make a big deal about it.
They really do. They really harp on this fact for quite a while. But then they start exploring inside the house. Warwick finds blood pouches in the fridge, which, you know, odd, strange. A train goes by, and Grissom's in the dining room, and he's watching all the pictures frame, you know, kind of like shake on the wall. But then he notices that there's like one section and one painting that's like not shaking. And so he goes over to that, and he realizes that it leads to like a secret room. So it leads like to this little corridor with like windy stairs down to this secret room. So he's down in this little secret room, not notifying anyone that he's in the secret room, right? Like not notifying the team, like, hey guys, found a secret room, I'm gonna go investigate. Doesn't have his gun drawn or anything, just goes down willy-nilly into the secret room. And Warwick and Sarah, they'll find him there. So they approach him, they scare him. And not purposely, but
there's the weird scene where Sarah is like putting her hand on his shoulder.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, sorry, you keep disappearing.
Yeah, you keep disappearing. But we learn in this scene that the chamber used in the magic show was invented by Zoe. There's like schematics there, and so they're starting to think that she is the inventor. While they're down there, they also find a picture that is titled the Klein Magical Tour, and they realize that Zoe and Zephyr are most likely siblings, so they think like it's the father in the picture, it's Zoe in the picture, it's a young Zephyr in the picture, and then Zephyr is holding a baby.
Yes. Although I guess we don't know the answer to this question. Is that like his really supposed to be his sister, or is that like could they have gotten married?
I don't think they ever really answered that question.
Because like, how do his last name ceases to be Klein at some point?
Yeah, it does cease to be
They don't
Klein.
address that at any
They
point.
don't address that at any point.
It's one of the many things I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, like what's happening here?
What's going on?
Yeah, they don't address it. So we leave storyline A for a bit though. We go to Nick and Catherine. They're approaching Greg Sanders. And we learn that the band was saying they were going to release a best of album, but there's an interview where Gus is like, no, like I'm never, like that's for sellouts. I'm never
reference.
I'm never going to do that. And so we have that short scene again. Yeah, Greg Sanders just keeps like popping in and out. We're with Sarah, Warwick, and Grissom in the little like spooky basement. Grissom finds a male Io moth. He gives Warwick a little biology lesson. Then they hear creaking upstairs. And I just feel like this was a bad safety episode. They're like, oh, didn't we dismiss the officer? It's a gigantic house. Why would you dismiss the officer? And no one knows you're down in the spooky basement. Someone could come down here and murder you in the spooky basement because you didn't tell anybody you came down to the spooky basement.
We just had an episode where there was a person in the house, and call back to the episode where the first episode of the whole show where someone died.
Yeah, but evidently we forgot all of those lessons. I mean, to be fair, Catherine is not in this scene, but Warwick is. So Warwick should have been like, "Hey, I just got angry at somebody for like not properly clearing a scene." But evidently in this episode, he doesn't care.
Also, by the way, I'm pretty sure that they call it a male Io moth, and it is a female Io moth.
Oh, they do call it a male Io moth.
Because I don't know, I'm basing this on like a handful of Wikipedia photos.
Okay.
But and the coloring, which would match. But there's a thing I know about moths and butterflies. It's not always true, but it's sometimes true. That might have been relevant. He's like, oh, they feed on vegetation or something.
Yes.
But a lot of times the adults don't eat anything, and they're just like,
they just breed and they die.
Bolt, their job's to fly around and find a mate.
Yeah.
But that's also not always true. Like, like monarch butterflies are notorious for flying really long distances, and they consume nectar to feed themselves, and so moths may very well. This moth may really do that. But I was trying to figure that out, and when I went to the Wikipedia page, it was like, wait a second, that's the wrong color.
You're like, wait a second here, this isn't right.
Which I thought they would like have like a bug expert, because like they have a character who's a bug expert, so you gotta like have a bug expert on call.
I know in later seasons they definitely consult with bug experts.
I'm glad they are using the bug thing, although it's really rather random in this episode.
It's very random.
It doesn't really do anything other than be a
talking point.
A parallelism,
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it doesn't solve the case by any stretch of the imagination. So they go upstairs, and after some looking around, a blonde woman basically just runs into Sarah. And is like, oh, sorry, But we'll come back to her. We then go to Nick with the guitarist in the band, and he admits that he's not clean, but he's saying he didn't give drugs to Gus. So he's admitting like his own, like, hey, I'm not clean, but I didn't give him any drugs. And also like, I don't use needles, I snort. So like, that's not my mode of, taking in drugs at this stage in my life.
Which should like raise the question, like they don't say this, but I think the idea is you're supposed to raise the question, where did the needle come from?
Oh, they answer that.
Well, they do.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like at this point,
at this point, no. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Where did the needle come from? But they don't like, you would think they would be like, well, where did he get a needle from then? Huh?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they don't ask that question. They don't challenge. Again. Oh,
very accepting in this episode.
Yeah. We could tell when you're telling the truth. So we just believe you.
We just know. We're good. So we stay with storyline B. Catherine is at like a suburbia home without any warrant, just like takes a scraping from the door, just like defaces her door.
Yeah, I don't think
that's her property. That's
not trash on the side.
That's not trash on the side of the road. That is somebody's personal property. You can't just like scrape things off their door.
I mean, those paint chips are not admissible in court, but I guess you can physically compare them to something. But this could be one of those like fruit of the poisoned well type things.
Entirely. But we learn that the home belongs to Samantha Dean, as she is saying that she doesn't know Gus. We learn, though, that she has a son, Brandon. And you can already tell that Catherine's not really buying this, but she's not pushing it at this point. So she gets in, Catherine leaves, gets into the car. She's like blasting the CD. She's reading the lyrics, which did bring me back to like my middle school age, my days. I was like, oh man, I remember getting CDs and like opening it up and like
Oh yeah,
reading the lyrics.
the lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah, pictures.
Yep. I was like, oh man, I was like, I remember those days because we're old. But we go back to storyline A with Jim Brass and Grissom. They're with Matilda, who is the blonde woman who ran into Sarah.
So this was, I actually blew past this earlier, but this is my spot the guest star.
Oh, okay.
I found spot the guest star.
Okay. Jennifer Skye is her actual name.
So I was explaining to Lauren that I'm 90% certain I definitely know who this person is. And I think I may have only ever seen the pilot of this TV show.
Okay.
But then seen a million commercials for it.
Fair.
There's a show called Cleopatra 2525.
I just saw this and I have no idea what this is.
Which is like targeted towards 14-year-old nerd boys who are into like space cyberpunk.
So just so for those who aren't familiar, the first sentence in the description of the show from IMDb is, an exotic dancer is frozen in 2001 and unfrozen in 2525 by two female warriors fighting against robots that have taken over the world.
Yeah, that about sums up the kind of show that I imagine it is. Yeah. The promotional material includes less clothing than you might expect somebody who's fighting robots to wear. But yeah, I don't believe I watched this show. Like I said, I think I may have watched like the pilot or something.
Yeah.
I did attempt to go back and watch a few minutes of this, and it is awful. And so I'm imagining that is why.
I mean, it only lasted two seasons.
Because it also stars Gina Torres, who was Zoe in Firefly and is in number of other things. And I was like, I could have watched this show, and I was like, nope, I definitely did not. And it's got like weird alien puppets in it, and but it reminds me of the kind of show that I would have been a target market for.
Yeah. This was definitely not marketed to me.
And I was watching a lot of other shows like Lex, which is like a weird sci-fi space show.
Okay.
On like I'm assuming this was probably on the Sci-Fi Channel or whatever network had like Hercules and Xena on it.
Yeah, I can't remember what
TBS or TNT or whatever it was, right? And so it was very, very much early 2000s cable television. But like, there's a scene where she's like, look at the camera. I was like, I know this person from somewhere, and yeah, but it is 1,000%. I was looking back. I was like, this is almost embarrassing. If I don't, and then I was like, do I know this show? And I was like, watching the show, I was like, no, I definitely didn't watch the show. I was like, did I watch like 2 seasons of the show? Am I gonna see 5 minutes of it? They're like, oh yeah, it's that show.
You're like, oh,
and
right,
I was like,
that one.
Well, thankfully I don't remember the show, but I definitely remember it. Remember the actress. So she must have been on a lot of commercials.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think people run commercials all the time on YouTube, but I don't think people understand what it's like to sit through like 3-minute commercial breaks.
Yes.
In the middle of TV shows.
Yeah.
Unskippable.
Yep.
No TiVo, no DVR, no.
We suffered, guys. We suffered.
Skip 10-second button. Nope. You know, now I get upset if I have to watch a 15-second ad on a streaming platform.
Same. So Jim Brass and Grissom are talking with Matilda, and she is saying that she's in the house because she wanted to talk to Zoe. We learn that Zoe is always a volunteer on opening night to go in the chamber, and we also learned that Matilda happens to drive an F-150.
So can I make one really important comment? Are you telling me that this was the first time they ever did the magic box trick and there's a person who goes missing? Because that's what the implication is it's opening night.
Maybe opening night means like opening night of a new show.
Yeah, like a new season or something. Yeah, because like she's been missing for a long time.
She's been missing for 6 months.
You could imagine they had to practice this.
Right.
And for her to not be around to practice for the last 6 months, you know, like, that's what I mean. Like, there's a lot of components to that's where I was like, wait, I think, like, even earlier when the stagehand is like, oh, yeah, normally, and then I escort the person out this door.
Right.
But this is the first time you've ever done it?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was like, that was a weird
Yeah, that is weird.
throwaway line that just like completely derailed my thought process.
Yeah, you're like, wait, this is
The
not
first time I
confusing.
watched the episode, I said, wait, wouldn't this have come up
Yeah, you're
before?
like,
This is the first
someone
time
would have
we
said
ever did
something.
this. That's a 100% kill percentage.
That's a good point. We go to work and Sarah, they're approaching the truck. The treads are a match.
Great
And
matchy see
so he just holds it up to
just holds a piece of paper next to a tire. It matches.
It matches.
And
We're really following. We're really being like sticklers for like rules here in this episode.
Hey, we're season 3. You know, you should have this stuff on lockdown.
Yeah, no, we're loosey goosey on this episode. And then just to add more fun to the mix, there's a Black Panther in the back of the truck.
An actual Black Panther.
Yes, like a
I'm sure that's
large feline.
I guess, but
so we'll come back to said Black Panther. But in the meantime, we're with Nick and Catherine. They're in the lab. Catherine is showing Nick a picture of Samantha Dean backstage with Gus. This leads her to go and pull evidence, and they realize that there is red paint in the like crevices of like a skull ring that he wears. So they're like, oh, that's probably from her door. So we come back to the Black Panther
ring too. Like,
yeah,
it's gonna do some real damage to that door.
Yeah. So we learn the Black Panther's name is Sadie, and Matilda is saying that she is her pet, but Zephyr hated animals, like he didn't want live animals in any of his shows, so she kept her in the truck between shows and then would like take her out to get some air. And then we learn that Zephyr was having another show this evening, and he's going to be debuting
first time ever selling out.
First time ever selling out. He's going to be debuting a new trick, so
another debut new trick.
And so we go along with Grissom, Sarah, and Warwick. They're at the show. And he tells the audience he's going to make himself disappear this time. So instead of making a volunteer disappear, he's going to make himself disappear. Instead, fire erupts in the chamber. I mean, he gets into the chamber and then just fire and chaos and screaming and...
Yeah. Really horrid screaming.
Yes. So...
for an otherwise whimsical episode. It's a dark moment.
It is a very dark moment. This is a weird contrast with the rest of the episode. We learn that the chamber was rigged, so the bottom that should have like been able to drop out so the person could get out of the chamber was rigged with a metal stake. And I will say, we're going to get to the scene with Toby in a minute, but the first watch through and then most of the way through the second watch through, I did not connect the dots here, and then I was like,
the stake from the other scene when the crucifix.
It did not connect the dots in my brain. So
by the way, like, there are a lot of things you can use to jam a door shut.
Yeah, why would you use your signature?
Why are you gonna be so self-incriminating?
So ridiculous. So
and you're the magic guy, and you're trying to. Spoiler alert! It was a frame job.
Yes. A very bad one. Very bad.
If you know anything about magic and you're trying to frame it, you know that his stakes are fake.
Right.
Like,
no, they're fake.
Well, unless you're a really bad magician, I guess.
Grissom with Doc Robbins, we learn that, in air quotes, Zephyr swallowed fire. So he basically died because his larynx closed, trying to like protect his throat from the fire. And so
it doesn't really matter what he died of. He burned to death.
He burned to death. Yeah. But another weird thing is that he had like surgical pouches, like pockets put into his mouth.
Yep.
Supposedly probably for some sort of like magic. Like swallowing something and then like being able to like regurgitate it back up. So
they mentioned Houdini.
Yes, they mentioned Houdini.
For handcuffs and keys and stuff.
Yeah. So this brings, and again, I don't know if this was just, I mean, to be fair, the first time I watched this was before I left for Vegas, but maybe I just had like pre-trip nerves and then I'm still adjusting to time differences. But they're Warwick and Sarah with Toby, and I'm like, why are they talking to him again? And it took me so long to realize it's because the stupid stake was holding the chamber door shut.
Yes.
Which like implicates, quote unquote, Toby.
They're in like I assume like a interrogation room. It's kind of a weird scene.
It's so weird. And so
they dump like a bag of stuff.
Yeah, of his
like,
stuff.
This is all your stuff. This is your entire bag of tricks. Yeah. A metaphorical and physical bag of tricks.
So Toby convinces Warwick to let him demonstrate the stake trick on him. And that's where we realize that it's like, the tip disappears. There's a fake blood pouch. And so Toby's like, I don't use real stakes. Like, this is all magic. It's all BS. Like, I don't have real stakes in my, in my act. Like, this tattoo is fake.
Oh yeah,
I'm from like the OC. Like,
I've been walking around with this open shirt with this tattoo on me while you just investigate me in the middle of the afternoon. But I'm wearing a fake tattoo, so fake it comes off like it was put on there from the back of a piece of fruit strip.
Yeah. So we realized that Toby's not the guy. So, but before we continue following that thread, we follow Nick and Catherine. They are with Samantha Dean, and they're basically like telling her like, hey, Gus was here. Like, we matched the paint on your door to the like scrapings in his ring, and she is sort of still kind of trying to fight it, but she does admit to being a registered nurse, aka where the needle came from, like where the syringe came from. And I had a feeling that this would stick out to you. So she's like, I'm not under arrest though, right? Like, she's trying to get clarification, and they're like, no, like, we're just here to like get your son's DNA. And she's like, okay, I should probably hire a lawyer, which I'm thinking, yes.
Yeah, great end of conversation, police.
But before that happens, Catherine guilt trips her. Catherine's like, oh, he just loved you so much, and like you denied
his music,
but you denied him, and blah, blah. And I'm like, Catherine, who are you to like say these things to this woman? And then Samantha Dean seemingly totally forgets that she had the wonderful idea of not saying anything and getting a lawyer. And then she just starts talking. She just
admits everything.
And I was like, no, you are so close to making
my kid, and I killed him.
Yes.
I had a needle in my bag.
I was like,
I gave you every piece of shred of evidence you need to convict me.
I was like, no, you were so close. Like, you were right there. You were right there.
I would have got away with it too if it weren't for that meddling mom.
So that's the end of that storyline.
Nope. I don't think we ever even see her get arrested.
Nope.
I mean, presumably she's free.
Yeah.
That was off the record conversation.
Yeah.
Between mothers.
So weird. So then Grissom is in the office. He's like playing with the coin that Zephyr gave him. He like looks at the moth. You can tell like this is another little like there was a light bulb, little light bulb.
Io moth.
Yes. Well, he's gonna say
I did. By the way, I did confirm.
You did confirm.
They do not eat an adult head.
Oh, okay. All right. And so he ends up going out in the hallway, and he's talking to Warwick and Sarah, and he's like, hey, find out everything about like Zephyr and his crew and yada yada yada. And so then we learn in this research, Warwick and Sarah learn, and thus we learn, that Zephyr and Punky are father and son.
Yep.
So Stagehand is
thanks to the internet.
Thanks to the internet, we learned that they both have a last name of Dillinger. So crazy.
Again, we don't know why his name isn't Kane. Yeah, it's never talked about or explained.
Nope. And
or if his mother is also his aunt.
Yep, we don't know that. Could be. We could have some Game of Thrones stuff going on here. We don't know.
Or where her body is.
Right. Yeah. So this is the reference of technically there is a body to find, probably.
Maybe, we assume.
But
she could be locked in a trunk in the desert, like from the first season.
This is true. I mean, we don't know. But there are containers of her blood in a fridge, which doesn't like bode well.
I like how they're hanging up.
Yeah, they're like hanging up in a fridge. So like that probably doesn't bode well for her, to be honest. Yeah, it's probably not great. So Grissom, and I will say there's very little in this show that grosses me out. Like I can basically watch the show and I could be eating and like watch the show. And I mean I could handle this, but they don't do it all the time. But every time they do it, I'm like, ooh. I get a little like, oh, this is gross. Grissom like takes the finger and like puts it on his finger to get the print. Okay. And every time I'm like, oh gosh, that just makes me so uncomfortable. But he does this so he can get the print. And we realize that it wasn't Zephyr in the chamber. It was Punky in the chamber. So the burned body with Doc Robbins, not Zephyr. It's Punky. So Grissom goes back to the basement. No backup. No weapon out.
Nope.
Just by his lonesome in the creepy basement.
And because he suspects he's going to find a murderer there.
Yes. He is there with the specific intention of finding Zephyr. So.
Presumably.
So he goes, he's in the basement, he pushes a wall, he finds another hallway, he continues down the hallway, and look at that, finds Zephyr. Doesn't radio for backup, doesn't pull out a weapon. Nah, he's good. Like, he trusts him. Like, he's cool. Like, you literally just murdered your son, but like, I should be safe. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, you'll murder your son, but
you hurt anyone.
I'm good. And this is where, like, we don't get the clarification. So Grissom suggests that he murdered Zoe. That Zoe is missing because Zephyr murdered her. And Zephyr's response to this is that he assumed her.
Yes. Which is basically saying...
Which I was like, all right. That's his, like, weird roundabout way of saying that he killed her so that he could become her, basically.
This is the point where you're supposed to realize he's a psychopath.
He is crazy pants. And so then he's like, oh, does a little trick. He's like, Abra Cadaver. And then that's where we learn that supposedly that is from several Hebrew words that mean the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. And so Grissom thinks that this was like a weird father kills the son so he can become the Holy Spirit. And Zephyr's like, no.
Yeah, it was a weird, like, thing for Grissom to say.
It was very strange.
It was even better because it was wrong.
Yeah, and Zephyr's like, no.
It's irrelevant.
No, Zephyr's like, no, that's not it. It's just, magic endgame like that. Whatever. And so he's let out. He puts him no resistance. He just gives him, like, Grissom's able to just bring him up on his own. But before he gets put in the cruiser, Grissom checks his mouth. He's like, hey, because of the pockets in Punky's mouth, he's like, hey, open up your mouth. And so opens out his mouth, he checks, he's like, all right, he's good. So they put him in the cruiser. And then he's in the cruiser and he regurgitates a key.
And apparently he's like Lex Luthor or some other supervillain, and we're supposed to he's going to escape and be in the Lamb, and that the two police officers driving him around won't shoot him as he runs away.
Yeah.
Or that the back door isn't locked, or that, like, all of the many other safety precautions that police officers take in transporting prisoners.
But that's the end of the episode. So
yep.
We're left to assume.
So we didn't have enough evidence. We had not enough evidence for either person. We just relied on confessions, I think.
I mean, technically, they watched Zephyr kill his son. But I would say manslaughter, like accidentally.
Anyone could have driven that nail into the cage. They never, like, found a fingerprint.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. I mean, like, they still got work ahead of them, but it won't matter because they got time because he's on the run now.
He's on the run.
He escaped with his regurgitated key. Pulled the David Blaine on them.
So, Nick, what did you think about today's episode?
Not a lot of good things. I think I've downgraded my opinion of this episode
as we talk about it.
Yes, because I think some of the things that, like, whenever you brought something up that bothered you, I was like, thank God, it also bothered you.
Yeah,
because
it wasn't just me.
I was like, I just felt like I was dogpiling on this episode at some point, and then it really just listen. I'm giving it a pass, and I'm giving it a 1.
Wow!
It was at a 1.5.
Wow!
We started recording.
Okay.
I decided because of the Iomaf male
that brought it down a peg.
We got to penalize people who misgender others. So, and Grissom doesn't even, and then he has a whole, like, didn't even know that adult moths don't eat things. That's like a really big part of
when he's
why
the bug
we
guy,
moth, right?
And he's the bug guy.
Yeah. So I think this. We're only 5 episodes in, but it's definitely the worst episode of the season.
So I think I would agree. I think I would probably give it like a 1.5. I don't know if I'd give it a 1.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I was giving it a 1.5, and then
That's
decided where is, first off, there's still room for a half. If there's a plane, train, or automobile episode, we have a room for a worse score.
That is true. Like, there's definitely room.
The 4 has to, what I mean? You can't, your scores can't go from like 0 to 3, right?
Right.
You gotta fill out the trajectory. So
yes. No, I
agree. If a 1, this is it for me.
Yeah.
For me,
that's fair. No, that's totally fair. And it's weird in the sense, like, I guess I would just say, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I would just say skip. Part of me wants to say rewatch, only in the sense of it literally took me 2 watches for me to make it make sense.
I mean,
so I don't want to, like, subject someone to watching it twice, but I feel like you almost have to watch it twice to, like, oh, that's what they were. That's what they wanted me to get there. I didn't get that. Like, that didn't really make sense. Like,
I think if anything, that's why you should skip it.
I know, and I was
you have to watch it twice to even appreciate it.
That's what I think. When CSI is great is because at the end of one watch, you can be like, oh man, that all came together and like so cool. And I didn't realize at the time, but now I'm like, sweet. This one, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. And when you watch an episode a second time, if you can find even more things, then it's even that much better. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it's like if you're just like, what are you guys doing? Okay, the lady just admitted for no reason. Okay.
Yeah.
You know
and
what I
then,
mean? It's like,
yeah.
what are you doing? You're cheating now.
And I feel like the episode can't figure out if Zephyr is a criminal mastermind or a complete idiot.
Yeah.
Which one is he? You seem to like think he's both things, like simultaneously. Like he's this criminal mastermind, but then he's also like a really dumb individual that doesn't know how to set up another magician.
Yeah. I just this is, I don't know. I hope this is the worst episode of the season.
And we have a ways to go. So
I know, but I want every episode to be better than this.
Yeah, well, I dare to say that as I'm looking at the next episode is better. I'm not going to say anything more than that.
I'm going to say, I dare to say I think it's worse. I was like, don't tell me that.
You're like, no, not 2 in a row. No, I think it's better. But I will leave you to make your own opinions because I don't want to unfairly sway you. Well, so next episode is season 3, episode 6, The Execution of Catherine Willows.
Oh my lord!
They don't execute Catherine Willows, but
that's a loaded name of an episode.
It's a very loaded. But I will give you that spoiler alert. They don't execute Catherine Willows in this episode, but. We'll see what you think of it when we return next week and we review it. But in the meantime, you can support us on Patreon at WhoAreYou?CSI Podcast. You can also find us on Facebook in the same way. We're also on Twitter/X and Instagram at WhoAreYou?CSI Pod. We also have a website, WhoAreYou?CSIPod.com. So feel free to visit us. And in the meantime, we will talk to you next week.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.